They say some rooms remember the people who lived in them, but apartment 407, it did the opposite. It made you forget. When Daniel Reeves moved into the building on 9th Avenue, he wasn't looking for comfort, just silence. After the accident, he couldn't stand noise. Couldn't stand people. He just wanted a quiet place to start over. A blank slate, where he could disappear from the world. Tell landlord, an old man with glassy, unblinking eyes, showed him the unit. The walls were a pale, washed-out color, and the air felt cold, sterile. Before handing over the keys, the landlord said something strange, his voice a low rumble. "If you sleep here, never face the window." Daniel laughed it off. He wasn't a superstitious man. He should have been. The first night was uneventful. Daniel unpacked a few boxers, made himself a cup of bitter instant coffee, and sat on the edge of his new bed. The apartment was quiet. Unnaturally quiet. There were no footsteps from the hallway, no creaking pipes, not even the sound of wind against the glass. It felt like the entire world had stopped just outside his door. He tried to distract himself, pulling out his phone to call his sister, Claire, but the call wouldn't connect. No signal. That was odd. His phone had worked perfectly fine that morning, right outside the building. The next day, Daniel noticed something was missing. He couldn't remember where he'd put his car keys. He retraced his steps, searching everywhere: the kitchen counter, his jacket pockets. He even checked the fridge out of desperation. Nothing. When he finally found them sitting in the bathroom sink, he let out a nervous laugh. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe it was the stress of the move. But as he left for work, something caught his eye. Faint, ghostly handprint on the inside of the window. He wiped it away with the sleeve of his shirt, dismissing Italiano. By night, however, it was back and T's time. It was larger. Over the next few days, Daniel's forgetfulness worsened. It started with small things, like forgetting to pay his bills or reply to important emails. But then, one morning, he stared at his own reflection in the mirror and, for a terrifying moment, couldn't recall his own birthday. That night, he found a small notebook sitting beside his bed. It was blank, except for one line written in shaky, desperate handwriting. "Your name is Daniel Reeves. Don't forget again." He didn't remember writing it. But the handwriting, it looked almost like his. Almost. On the 5th night, Daniel woke up abruptly at 2:47 a.m. There was a faint sound, like a low humming, coming from inside the walls. He sat up, listening, then pressed his ear against the cold plaster. It wasn't humming. It was whispering. At first, the words were nonsense, a jumble of sounds. But then, he caught a clear phrase, a voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Stay with us." The whisper grew louder, more insistent, filling the silence of the room until suddenly it stopped. He flicked on the lights, his heart pounding in his chest. His notebook lay open on the desk again. A new line was written inside, "Do not face the window." His hands were trembling. He didn't remember writing that, either. The next morning, Daniel finally got a call through to his sister. Her voice was strained, laced with anxiety. "Daniel, where have you been? I've been calling for days." He frowned, confused. "Days? I just moved in 2 nights ago." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, she spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "Daniel, you moved in 2 weeks ago." Before he could process what she'd said, the call cut off. The line filled with static, and through the hiss, he heard it again, the same disembodied whisper from the walls. "Stay with us." Daniel's notes were piling up now. Every night, he'd frantically write down what he needed to remember. His name, his job, his family, but every morning, the ink would be faded. Almost gone except for the warnings. The warnings were always dark and clear. He decided to test it. He wrote, in bold letters, "The window is harmless." The next morning, that sentence was gone. Replaced, new words had been carved into the page. as if with a knife. "You're not supposed to be here." He'd had enough. He stormed down to the landlord's office. The old man just stared at him for a long, unsettling time before finally speaking. "You're not the first tenant, but you might be the last one who remembers asking." Daniel demanded to know what he meant. What was wrong with that apartment? The landlord only shook his head. 407 was sealed once. It should have stayed that way. That evening, Daniel packed his bags. He was leaving. He planned to be out before sunrise, but a crushing exhaustion pulled him down, and he fell into a heavy sleep, lying on his back. The dark window, just at the edge of his vision, at 3:04 a.m., a soft tapping woke him. 3 distinct taps on the glass. Then silence. He slowly, hesitantly, turned his head. Someone was standing outside his window, his 4th-story window. It was him. The same face, the same clothes, the same tired expression. But this version of him smiled. Then it raised a hand and tapped the glass again once for every frantic beat of his heart. Daniel was frozen in terror. The other him whispered through the glass, its voice his own, but cold and empty. "Your turn to forget." And then, as if the glass had turned to water, his reflection stepped through the window and into the room. The next morning, the landlord used his master key to unlock apartment 407. The room was empty. No luggage, no furniture, just a single notebook lying on the floor, its pages scattered. On the very last page, in Daniel's familiar handwriting, were 3 lines. "My name is Daniel Reeves. I don't know where I am. The man in the window looks just like me." The landlord sighed, a tired, practiced sound. He picked up the notebook and placed it in a dusty cardboard box under his desk. Inside were dozens of others, each labeled with a different name, different tenants from a long, forgotten history. He closed the box, the lid scraping shut, and whispered softly to the empty air, "Welcome home, 408. Then he walked back up to the apartment, took out a screwdriver, and crossed out the number 407 on the door, replacing it with a fresh, new number plate.